Okay, everyone, let's get started. To me, Matthew Fox as Jack in Lost is one of the most accomplished and complex, but ultimately the most important lead performance in TV ever. Not necessarily the best, maybe not even my personal favourite, but I think that without it, we never would have got anything better. So a while back, Lost was added to Netflix here in the UK. I think it was to do with the 20th anniversary. So they put the whole thing back up online. The truth is, I never need much of a reason to rewatch it. Every few years, I'll go through a cycle of rewatching shows like Broad City, Community, Justified, Mad Men, Lost, the lot. There's always been a kind of debate about when the golden age of TV truly began, when TV started to be seen as prestige. The Sopranos started in like 1999, and that's often seen as the pioneer. But personally, I mark the real start of prestige TV a little bit down the line in 2007 with the premiere of Mad Men.
Drop you at the station? Sure.
Since that show, we've had things like Breaking Bad, House of Cards, Succession, True Detective, The Marvelous Miss Maisel, I May Destroy You, Girls, Homeland, Atlanta, The Bear. You know, an entire wave of TV as good, if not better, than a lot of cinema in terms of writing, performance, production, value, and yes, most importantly to this discussion, star power. See, that star power shift is significant. I think that pre-2007, movie actors didn't want to step down into television. TV actors, once a show got popular, would often kind of leave early to try and break into film, or, you know, to do their own thing, to have another vehicle formed around them. Lost came out of that older era. It was long seasons, it was big networks trying to kind of stretch a hit for as long as possible. So when a show's breakout star left for something bigger, it was kind of expected. Even during the Prestige era, this stuff kind of happens, right? I mean, Donald Glover didn't stick it out for the final season of Community because he had other opportunities.
Season 9 of Scrubs, Zach Braff was only in the first 6 episodes.
That son of a bitch! After everything Scrubs did for him?
The point is that now, TV is not nearly as much of a step down as it used to be. You'll get Academy Award-winning stars who want to do television, who want to spend time getting to unpack a character over a longer period of time, maybe a miniseries, or maybe even like a longer series. Knowing that they get to work on something with as much care and craft as a feature film for that kind of period, it's really alluring. And so the question is, what does this all have to do with Lost, and what does this all have to do with Jack? Well, first, to answer that, I have a bit of a question, one that I think I've solved the answer to. Why didn't True Detective work after season 1? I actually think this is not only a really important question for people who are making things for screen, but actually anyone who's trying to tell a story. There's a really important lesson within this. So, season 1 is a masterpiece. It's always been considered that way. It's been considered one of the greatest seasons of TV ever. But since then, the show has always been chasing that high and actually never even really come close to replicating it. Now, a big part of the magic was Rust Cole, right, played by Matthew McConaughey. He's the philosophical heavyweight of the show. His monologues, you know, still pretty much echo all over the internet, whether on YouTube or TikTok or even Reddit threads, you know, memory, time, the void. But I think, and I'm not saying he gets totally overlooked, but I think equally as importantly, but not necessarily acknowledged so, is Woody Harrelson's character. He was the grounding force, you know. Every time McConaughey drops some haunting line about human consciousness or cosmic horror, Woody would cut right through it.
This place is like somebody's memory of a town, and the memory's fading. It's like there was never anything here but jungle.
Stop saying shit like that. It's unprofessional.
Oh, is that what I'm going for here?
Just want you to stop saying odd shit.
Now, if you compare that to season 2, which had Vince Vaughn, Rachel McAdams, Colin Farrell, all very talented actors, with some others sprinkled in there too, everything felt very heavy. Everything felt very overwrought. That philosophical weight was still very much there, but that human counterpart at the anchor was basically gone. That character, that Woody Harrelson character, is what Scott McCloud, who wrote the book Understanding Comics, would have called a kind of neutral mask, or what's since been coined a neutral mask.
Understanding Comics, motherfucker. Have you read it?
If you haven't read Understanding Comics, it's one of the most insightful books about art that I've ever come across. So there's a chapter where McCloud arranges drawings of a face along a spectrum. from photorealistic to abstract to cartoonish. He lays this spectrum at the bottom of a triangle. According to McCloud, this triangle represents the kind of total visual vocabulary of comics, and arguably of all visual storytelling. Now, at the top of the triangle is the picture plane, where lines, colors, and shapes exist purely as themselves. They have no need to pretend to be something else. But along the bottom, we move from reality to language, from the complex to the simple, from the realistic to the iconic, and from the specific to the universal. And the more abstract or iconic a character becomes, it's way easier for us to kind of project ourselves onto them. This is the idea of masking. It's in comic books. It's why something as sort of minimal, as simple as a bathroom stick figure can feel way more universally relatable than, say, the Mona Lisa. McCloud puts it like this. When you look at a photo or a realistic drawing of a face, you see it as the face of another. But when you enter the world of the cartoon, you see yourself. The cartoon is this vacuum into which our identity and awareness are pulled. Now, that principle essentially applies to film and TV and other sort of storytelling mediums too, especially with big franchises. You need a kind of neutral mask, not necessarily a blank slate and not necessarily a cipher, just something simplified enough, grounded enough that we can step into them. And even outside of big blockbusters, you have this too, right? I mean, if you think about a movie like Superbad, Michael Cera's character is the mask. Low-key, reactive, recognizable. He grounds the story while McLovin and Seth spiral outward. Think Frodo, think Skywalker, think Potter. And in True Detective, Woody was the mask. So if you go back to that moment...
I just want you to stop saying odd shit.
That's us. We might quote McConaughey, but we live like Woody. So again, what does this have to do with Jack? What does this have to do with Lost? Well, Jack isn't just the central character, the neutral mask. He's very much the emotional core. Alongside Locke, sure, they're the kind of philosophical poles of the show. But Fox's performance has this very specific weight to it. Jack, surprisingly so for a lead character, gets some really big lines, gets some really big breakdowns, some moral crises, and he delivers over and over and over again. There's a kind of raw, sort of internal anguish that just is pulsing through him without ever veering into melodrama. It feels really earned. Everything he does feels earned. And that's really rare for a lead back then. The thing is, most TV shows pre-Mad Men, pre-2007, most TV shows were heavy on exposition. Everything had to be explained. Everything had to be explained twice, and Lost was no different. Watch this scene here, between Benjamin Linus and Saeed in the episode From the Shape of Things to Come. The context is that Saeed's first love has died after being hit by a car, and Benjamin is trying to lure Saeed into his employ as a contract killer by telling him that a man at his wife's funeral is the one that took her life.
There was a man at her procession. He goes by the name of Ishmael Bakir. He's one of Wilmore's men. Bakir was last seen 5 days ago in Los Angeles, caught by a traffic camera speeding away from the corner of La Brea and Santa Monica.
Now, even without dialogue, this is super intense. The music, Ben's delivery, the grainy camera footage, the way he says La Brea and Santa Monica. And yet...
That's 3 blocks from where Nadia was killed.
I mean, do we need that? Did we really need that moment? Did we need that line? Again, now this is not a dig at the writers. Damon Lindelof went on to create The Leftovers and Watchmen, both complete masterpieces. His most recent show, Mrs. Davis, might be one of the most interesting takes on AI that I've ever seen. The thing about Lost and its exposition, it's a product of the era. Long seasons, but not only long seasons, mid-season hiatuses, and no streaming culture. You had to constantly remind viewers about what happened last week. So the writing wasn't always elegant, but amidst all that clutter, to me, Matthew Fox brought something rare. Restraint, vulnerability, and clarity. Now, in contrast to that moment between Saeed and Ben, check out this moment from Jack in the opening episode, about after 8 minutes of him chasing around and trying to save people from dying in this plane crash.
I don't know which one will work best.
all good. Thanks.
30 seconds. 20 seconds before Boone comes up and says his line, and then a further 10 seconds before Jack speaks. And so much is being said. The show trusted Matthew Fox to carry us for 30 seconds and then for 6 seasons. Go through the show again and try and find a 30-second stillness like that. Matthew Fox was the anchor. He was the steady hand, he was the neutral mask. In the kind of triangle of Lost, Locke was very much the abstraction, he was the philosophy, the big ideas. Sawyer was language. Sawyer was the charisma, the attitude. But Jack felt like reality. Jack felt like us. In many ways, he was us, even if you didn't like him. And I think in a show packed with smoke monsters and time travel and ancient mythology, he was exactly what we needed. Now, this is going to sound like a stretch, and I'm sure this will garner some healthy responses in the comments, but in the same way that Brando redefines screen acting.
Well, I had some bets down for you. You saw some money.
You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody.
Lost, through Jack and through Matthew Fox, to me, redefined what TV and what TV executives could ask of a big mainstream audience, and what it could trust them to feel. And here's the thing, look, I get it. You must be thinking, hold on, what about The Sopranos? That came first, and Gandolfini's performance is an absolute all-timer. No argument there, I'm not disputing that at all. But it's important to remember, The Sopranos aired on HBO. It wasn't made for an immediate mass audience. It was niche, premium cable. It had the space to take its time and build a following. At its peak, The Sopranos season 4 finale poured in just under 13 million viewers. Lost premiered with 18. If we were to compare how they both looked on their respective premieres, there was a 15 million viewer gap on day one. So when we compare them, we've got to acknowledge that big difference. The Sopranos was allowed to grow, encouraged to, and thank God it did. But Lost had to explode right out of the gate. It was network TV, primetime ABC, built for scale, for everybody. And I think that within that machine, Matthew Fox managed to give a performance with nuance, restraint, and weight. And to me, that's not just impressive, it's kind of wild.